President Biden says Russia is on the verge of invading Ukraine right now.
The U.S. government has responded with sanctions, but so far, Russian President Vladimir Putin is not backing down.
We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize a long-term impact on Russia.
The Russian oligarch crackdown continuing.
He says the conflict in Ukraine is now the greatest threat to the security in Europe since World War II.
Well, Italian authorities seizing over $150 million worth of yachts and villas over the weekend. The sanctions only prevent the oligarchs from transferring or moving their assets.
I didn't understand that myself, I've got to be totally honest. I thought, just tell them, we're going to cut off Russian oil and gas. We're going to sanction every single one of your oligarchs. We're going to impound your yachts.
When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Western governments unleashed some of the toughest sanctions in modern history. Oligarchs suddenly saw their super yachts seized, their mansions locked, and billions in bank accounts frozen. Overnight, Russia's richest elites were cut off from much of their fortune outside of Russia. On paper, it looked like the end of Russia's billionaire elite. But that's not the whole story. In the shadows, new networks and loopholes emerged, helping oligarchs preserve and move their billions, even under sanctions, in what is known as Russia's shadow banking system. But how does it work? Who makes it possible? And why can't sanctions fully stop it? Let's dive into the secret world of Russia's shadow bank.
Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what exported to Russia. This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy immediately and over time. We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize a long-term impact on Russia and minimize the impact on the United States and our allies.
Sanctions were meant to stop Russian oligarchs in their tracks, but their money found another way. Instead of being frozen, it flowed through a web of offshore companies, shell corporations, and secret accounts, often located in Europe, Asia, and the Caribbean. For example, Roman Abramovich, the billionaire owner of Chelsea FC, moved funds through offshore companies in Cyprus and the Virgin Islands. Banks, lawyers, and consultants outside Russia played a crucial role, knowingly or unknowingly, by helping set up complex corporate structures that hide the true owners. These networks make it nearly impossible for regulators to track exactly who owns what. Transactions were often disguised as ordinary business dealings, paying for consulting, shipping, or investments, so billions could move without immediately raising red flags. In other words, wealth is shielded behind layers of legal structures, while sanctions are only partially effective. The system is fragile, risky, and expensive, but it works, allowing Russian elites to continue funding lifestyles, businesses, and political influence, even when the world is trying to cut them off.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill. On Blueberry Hill.
At the heart of Russia's shadow banking system are layers of intermediaries who operate just outside the reach of sanctions. Wealthy Russians often move money through trusted associates, sometimes family members, sometimes longtime business partners, who are not on any sanctions list themselves. On paper, these people appear as the official owners of companies, yachts, or real estate. In reality, they are simply stand-ins, shielding the true oligarch behind them. Another strategy involves using friendly jurisdictions, countries that have not joined Western sanctions. In places like Dubai or Turkey, Russian money can still flow more freely into banks, real estate, and luxury goods. From there, it can be rerouted into global markets, often disguised as legitimate investment capital. Cryptocurrencies have also played a role, though their use is limited compared to traditional finance. Digital assets allow quick cross-border transfers that are harder to trace, especially when funneled through exchanges in jurisdictions with weak oversight. All of this creates an invisible safety net for sanctioned elites. Their wealth never truly vanishes. It simply changes form, moves into new channels, and reappears under different names. The world sees sanctions on paper, but behind the curtain, the money keeps circulating. Let's pause for a moment. When it comes to your own finances, knowledge and control matter more than ever. That's where the Alchemist comes in. It's a smart trading tool that monitors markets and investments on autopilot. No need to watch charts or push buttons. The software finds opportunities and executes trades for you. It's not about blind trust. It's about transparency and staying in control. Click the link in the description and use code SHADOWBANK for 10% off. Now back to the story.
Is a Cold War. As I said to him, this is not a kumbaya moment, as he used to say back in the 60s in the United States, like, let's hug and love each other. But it's clearly not in anybody's interest. Your countries are mine. For us to be in a situation where we're in a new Cold War. And I truly believe he thinks that.
For years, the shadow banking network was almost invisible, operating in the gray zones of finance where oversight was weakest. But by 2022 and 2023, cracks began to appear. Western investigators started piecing the puzzle together. Journalists, whistleblowers, and massive leaks revealed just how vast and sophisticated the system really was. The Pandora Papers and the FinCEN files, for example, showed how Russian oligarchs moved billions through lawyers, consultants, and obscure firms in places like Cyprus, Dubai, and the Caribbean. Suddenly, what had long been hidden in the shadows was now splashed across headlines. Governments rushed to respond. Sanctions were tightened, loopholes were closed, and new rules targeted the very middlemen, the banks, accountants, and lawyers who had quietly kept the system running. Some offshore hubs promised reforms, and major Western banks were hit with fines for ignoring suspicious transactions. For a moment, it seemed as if the walls were finally closing in. But the truth is, the system never truly collapsed. It adapted. Some oligarchs shifted their fortunes into gold, art, or crypto, assets even harder to trace. Instead of disappearing, the shadow bank simply morphed into new shapes, harder to see, harder to track, harder to stop. The story of Russia's shadow bank isn't just about sanctions and billionaires. It's about the limits of financial control in a globalized world. For all the laws, rules, and watchdogs, money has a way of slipping through cracks when there's enough wealth and motivation behind it. It also shows how crucial middlemen are. Banks, lawyers, accountants, consultants. Without them, oligarchs couldn't move a single dollar. Yet for years, many looked the other way, blinded by profit or lulled into thinking it wasn't their responsibility. The lesson is simple. Sanctions can freeze yachts, mansions, or bank accounts, but unless the networks enabling hidden wealth are dismantled, the system will always find a way to adapt. Transparency, cooperation, and accountability aren't just buzzwords. They're the only tools capable of shining light into the shadows. Russia's shadow banking remains one of the most powerful examples of how money defies borders. From frozen assets to offshore havens, from crypto wallets to secret trusts, the story reveals a harsh truth. Wealth in the shadows rarely disappears. It just changes form. And that means the fight is far from over. The shadow bank may not have an address or a single vault, but as long as power and secrecy go hand in hand, it will always exist. Thanks for watching.